Hi again, I'm Jessel Brizan and welcome to our trousers sketch tutorial. Today we're going to create a basic trouser, flats, front and back view. And as you can see on the screen, I've already taken the liberty of placing our croquis template. Alright, and if you look at the layers palette, I've created the croquis layer and I've already created the shape layer. Alright, just to save on time. So let's dive right in to create our shape. And what I like to do is I like to zoom in on the bottom half of the croquis a little bit because we're creating the trousers. We need to see the lower portion of the torso. Alright, or the lower portion of the body. So let's select the pen tool, no fill, black stroke, and we're going to create the half a shape as we did with the skirt tutorial. We're going to reflect it and then join it. And we're going to create the half a shape with 8 anchor points. So our first anchor point just above the waistline directly on our blue guide, we're going to single click. That's our first anchor point. Next, we're going to come out to the side waist. And I'm going to hold down the shift key because I want to create a straight horizontal line. So holding down the shift key, I'm going to single click. There I get my horizontal line. So this is creating the back view of the waistband. Next, I'm going to come down to the hip area. And I'm going to click and drag to create a Bezier curve. Right? So it gives me a nice curve of the hip. Again, you can always come back and modify this. Alright, our next anchor point is going to be at the outer knee. So we're actually coming down and to the right a little bit. And to the outer knee area, you're going to single click. And these trousers are straight leg trousers. So to create the leg, I'm going to hold down the shift key. And I'm going to come down to the outer angle. And I'm going to single click. So I get a straight vertical line. To create the hem, I'm going to continue holding down the shift key. I'm going to come to the inner ankle area and single click. Great. And then to create the leg again, the leg shape, I'm going to come up to the inner knee area about the same height as the anchor point on the outer knee area, and I'm going to single click. So great, I have the leg shape. To complete this shape, I'm going to come directly on the blue guide just a little bit below the crotch, and I'm going to click and drag up and to the right. So I'm giving it a nice subtle curved shape of the inner thigh. Alright, I'm going to go to select, deselect, and I'm going to hide the croquis layer so we could see the shape. Alright, so at this point, if you need, you could select any of the anchor points, modify the shape to your heart's content. So I'm going to modify that a little bit. I think I'm okay with this. I'm going to select the selection tool, select the shape, and I'm going to select my reflect tool. Again, I'm going to move my cursor onto the blue guide and place the reference point there. So that's my line of reflection. I'm going to move the cursor above the shape. I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt. Again, Shift is going to constrain the movement. Alt is going to give me the duplicate. I'm going to left click and drag to the right. Once I see the reflection, I'm going to release the mouse button first, then Shift and Alt. Alright, so let's join the shape. I'm going to hide my blue guide temporarily by pressing Ctrl and semicolon. I'm going to select the direct selection tool. So the direct selection tool, I'm going to select these 2 anchor points at center front on the waist. And I'm going to go to Object, Path, Average. We want both as we did with the skirt sketch tutorial. Click OK. And again, we can access this by right clicking on the screen or on the artboard, and I'm going to select join. Next, I'm going to join the 2 anchor points at the crotch. So again, with the direct selection tool, select these 2 anchor points. I'm going to right click, average both, click OK, and then right click, join, and good. We have our shape completed. Alright, so next we're going to create the details. So we're going to click the create new layer button in our layers palette, and we're going to rename this layer details. Press enter to accept that. We're going to lock our shape layer and we're going to create our details. I'm going to bring back or make my croquis layer visible. I'm also going to make my blue guide visible, and I'm going to zoom in on the waist so you could see better what it is I'm actually going to be doing. So let's select the pen tool again, no fill, black stroke. And we're going to be creating the front shape of the waistband, and it's going to be curved. So this is what we're going to do. Our first anchor point is at side waist, directly on top of this point here. You're going to single click. Then we're going to move our cursor onto the blue guide just a bit down from the waist, that dash waistline. And we're going to left click and drag. So you're going to see our handles. After we start dragging, you hold down the shift key, right, to constrain the handles horizontally. And once you like the shape of the waistband, you're going to release the mouse button. And then you're going to release the shift key. Alright, I'm going to go to select, deselect, so you can see that shape. Alright, So we're creating the waistband. Obviously, we need to create the waistband or the waist seam line. There are a couple ways we could do it, so I'm going to demonstrate both of them. I'm going to select the selection tool and select this line. I'm going to go to edit copy and then edit paste in front. So I've copied that line and pasted that copy directly on top of it, and I'm going to use the down arrow key on the keyboard to nudge that line down. Alright, so again, you could see we are creating the waistband shape. However, you'd notice there's a gap here. And to rectify that, you would simply select this anchor point and just nudge it across and up as need be. The thing with this is that if you want a nice parallel shape of the waistband, right, it looks okay, but I'll show you a better way of achieving that shape. Alright, so let me just delete this. Alright, I'm going to press Control F, which is edit paste in front again, to get a copy of that line. And this time what I'm going to do is, in the control panel, or you could go to the stroke palette, I'm going to increase the stroke weight. Alright, so I'm going to use about 32 points. Alright, so what you'll see is it creates the shape that I want. So I'm going to expand the stroke weight to a height, right? So we could see the center line here of the path, or the path, and this is the distance from that, and you'll see exactly how this works. So next, what I'm going to do is go to Object, Path, Outline, Stroke, and then I'm going to click the Swap Fill and Stroke button, so you could see the outline, right, of the shape. And what we want is this line segment. So I'm going to select the scissors tool, which is hidden below the eraser tool. I'm going to cut away the unwanted segment. So I'm going to cut where this line intersects the side seam, and then I'm going to cut at center front, and then I'm going to select the unwanted segment and delete that. So great, we have a nice parallel shape of the waistband. All right. So next we're going to draw the belt loop. So it's very easy to do this. I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and I'm going to come across here to the waistband. So I'm going to place my cursor at the top of the waistband. I'm going to click, left click and drag to create a belt loop shape. All right. Usually the belt loops would overlap the bottom waistband line, or the waist seam line, right, as you would typically see. Right. Now the problem with this is you could see the waistband through the belt loop. So all you need to do is to rectify that is simply create a white fill. Now, obviously, you could see that this belt loop, right, if you look at the shape of it, or how it corresponds to the waistband, we need to have the belt loop perpendicular to the waistband. Alright, so before we do that, however, what we're going to do is keep a duplicate of this belt loop for the back view. So I'm just going to simply save a duplicate out there using the Alt key, and I'm going to select this original one. And once you select an object with the selection tool, you'll see the 8 white handles. If you move the cursor to the outside of any of the handles, it will change the curved double-sided arrow, which would allow you to rotate the object on its center. So I'm simply going to left click and rotate clockwise, and I want to rotate this belt loop and make it perpendicular to the waistband. Alright, you could just simply drag it as well to reposition it so that the top of the belt loop aligns with the top of the waistband. Also, typically what you would see is the belt loop would be closer to center front than it is to side seam. So good, I'm okay with this. I'm going to deselect that. Next, we're going to move on to creating the front pocket and the bar tags, and this is a very simple procedure. Right, using the pen tool, or you could use the line segment tool. Again, we want no fill, right, black stroke. Good. And with 2 anchor points, we're going to draw, and this is a cheap version of a front pocket. 2 anchor points, we're going to come here a little distance from the belt loop directly on the waist seam line, single click, and then you're going to move your cursor onto the side seam, down and to the left directly on the side seam line, and you're going to single click. Alright, so there we have a cheap version of the pocket. Again, if you need to modify that, I'll nudge that down a little bit. Alright, and then nudge it across, right, because we want to make sure that it's touching. Let me go to select, deselect. Alright, so we want to make sure that it's touching, and let me zoom in a little bit. Right, I think there's a gap there. Alright, so we don't want any gaps. Use the direct selection tool, select the anchor points, and again just nudge it so that there are no gaps. Okay, good. Alright, so obviously we need to reinforce our pocket, so most likely there should be bar tags, and I'll show you how we could create a bar tag. So let me zoom in a little more, on this so you can see exactly what it is I'm doing. This time I'm going to use the line segment tool. Alright, and I'm simply going to come here, right, on this side of the pocket, and I'm going to draw a short line segment perpendicular to the pocket shape. Alright, you can always modify it afterwards. I think that looks perpendicular enough. Alright, so to create our bar tag, we're going to use an effect that's built into Illustrator. Before we do that, we're going to reduce the stroke weight. Alright, in the stroke palette, let's do 0.25. You can always adjust it afterwards. And we're going to go to the effect menu. We're going to go to the store transform and then to zigzag. So it opens up the zigzag dialog box. We're going to check the preview button so we can see exactly what we're creating. We're going to check the relative button because we want to work with percent. And also we're going to check smooth, right? And pretty much what we're going to do is to create the effect of a bar tag. So for the size, we can play around with this. Right now it's about 10. I'm going to use about 10. And you can drag the ridges per segment to see what that looks like. About 17 should be okay. So you could see the effect of what it is we are creating. And once you're satisfied with the bar tag, you just simply click OK. Now with the selection tool, I'm just simply going to drag this in place. Good. Alright, so again, the bar tag would reinforce the pockets. Using the selection tool again and the Alt key, I'm simply going to duplicate this to the opposite edge of the pocket. Good. And there we have the bar tags. Alright, so let me zoom out a little bit so you can see that. Right, so again, it's a cheap version of a pocket. Okay, next we're going to create the crease line of the trousers. Very simple to do. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out so I can see the full trousers. Again, you could use the pen tool or you could use the line segment tool. Either one works okay. And in this case, I'm going to use the line segment tool. So I'm going to draw a vertical line. Alright, so I'm going to move my cursor to about the center of my hem here. And using the shift key, I'm going to simply left click and drag to create a line to about the height of the crotch. I'm going to release the mouse button first and then release the shift key. Now Illustrator remembers the stroke weight we last used, which was 0.25. I'm going to make this a stroke weight of about 0.5. It's not a style line, so I don't want it to be the same thickness as the shape. So I'm going to use 0.5. Alright, let me go to select deselect. And I'm going to hide the crookie layer so you can see exactly what we just did. Alright. So if you need, you can always use the selection tool and select the crease line, and if you need to nudge it over a little bit to center it more on the trousers, which is what I'm doing, feel free to go ahead and do that. Alright, so what we do at this point now, we're going to reflect all of these shapes, and then we're going to create our front fly zipper. Alright, so using the selection tool, I'm simply going to select all of these shapes, and I'm going to reflect it. So using the reflect tool, place my reference point on the blue guide, move the cursor above, hold on shift and alt, left click and drag, release the mouse button first and then release shift and alt. So I'm going to go to select deselect. Alright, great. So we could see the shape. Now as we saw with the skirts, I'm going to zoom in and make sure there are no gaps. Let me hide my blue guide so there are no gaps there. If you want to be on the safe side, you could join these lines if you so choose. Right, because remember these are separate lines. So what you could do is simply select it, right click, average, both, and then right click join. And you could do this one as well, average, and then join. Okay, so those are now solid lines. Now you'd see what happens here is that Illustrator, once you do something that is like merging two lines, it's going to bring it above the belt loop. So all you need to do is with the selection tool, you could select your belt loops and just simply go to object, arrange, bring to front. So just bring it back on top, and that solves the problem. Okay, so let's create the fly. Very simple. Let's bring back our blue guide, and I'm going to use the line segment tool. You could use the pen tool again, no fill, black stroke. Right, and stroke weight of 1 point. And from the crotch area, I'm going to simply use the shift key and draw a line to the top of the waistband. Alright, so that represents the front opening. Let me go to select deselect, the front opening of the trousers. I'm going to hide my blue guide, And again, we don't want any gaps. So again, with the selection tool, I could nudge this over a little bit just to align it more center. And if there are any gaps, use the direct selection tool, select the anchor point, and you could nudge it. Right, so you don't want any gaps showing. Great. Let's create our front fly top stitch. So we're going to select the pen tool again, no fill black stroke, and we're going to create this shape with 3 anchor points. So I'm going to come from the crotch, I'm going to come up a little bit, right about the height of the fly area. Alright, so this first point, I'm going to click and drag to the right, and I'm going to use the shift key just to constrain the handles a little bit. Next, I'm going to come up and to the right a little bit, and I'm going to click and drag, and again I'm going to use the shift key to constrain the handles. And I'm looking at the shape of the Bezier curve because again this is going to be a top stitch, but I want the shape to be have a nice curve to it. Great, that's 2. The final point, I'm going to hold down the shift key, and I'm going to click directly on the waist seam line. It's going to give me a straight vertical line, and that completes the line that's going to represent the top stitch. Okay, so let me go to select, deselect, and with the selection tool, I'm going to select this line segment I just drew. I'm going to go to the stroke palette. Again, this is going to be our top stitch. So let's change the stroke weight. Right, we're going to use about 0.5 points. You're going to check the dash line box. So like I say, Illustrator has some really great tools, and we're going to use a dash of 2 points and a gap of 2 points. Good. And we're going to apply, just as we did with the skirt, apply a round cap and a round join, right, just to render it. So there we have our fly top stitch, right, and that completes the front view of the trousers. Right, now if you want, you could place a button on the front. Right, they're going to be buttons on the back of this trousers, or you could say, well, if this has the hook, you can leave it as that, which will be hidden on the inside. Right, so as we did with the skirt, we're going to use the front view, right, to create the back view. So I'm going to unlock the shape layer. I'm going to select all the elements of the front, and I'm simply going to drag to the right and then hold down Shift and Alt. Again, Shift is going to constrain the movement, Alt is going to give me that duplicate. Release the mouse button first, then release Shift and Alt. So this duplicate is going to be our official front, and we're going to use the original front to create the back view. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to lock back our shape layer, and we're going to delete all of the unwanted elements of the front or of the back view of the trousers. Okay, so let me zoom in again. So we don't need the pockets, the bar tacks, right? We don't need the front waistband, the fly, top stitch, right? So we don't need any of these elements here. So we delete all of those. We're gonna keep this line, which was the front opening of the trousers, and this is going to represent our center back seam line of the trousers. All right. What is good to do, we like to maintain, is good to maintain the height of the waistband. So here we could see the waistband here. So I'm going to make my guides visible again, and what I'm going to do is simply drag a horizontal guide and line it up with the waistband or the waist seam line of the official front trousers, right? So good. So that way we're going to know the height of the waistband for the back view. Okay, so let's create the waistband. So I'm going to zoom in here. So all we need to do is, I'm going to use the line segment tool again. You could use the pen tool, and using the shift key, I'm going to simply draw a straight horizontal line. Now again, Illustrator is going to remember what we did before. Let me just hide the blue guides. All right, so I would need to change the stroke weight of this line back to 1 point. All right, and we could see a little funny business happening here. This line shouldn't be overlapping, and it needs to stop at the waistline seam. So I'm going to click on the center back seam line, select the anchor point here at the top, and nudge it down. I don't want it overlapping, and there should be no gaps. So good. All right, we have our center back seam line. Okay, now this trousers, it has 4 belt loops on the back. So using the selection tool, I'm simply going to drag this belt loop and I'm going to lay it out one here, closer to side seam. Again, you can see the problem we're having. Again, because of the layer order of objects, we need to bring this to the front. So we could go to the object menu or simply right click, arrange, bring to front. So good, it solves that problem. Now that we've solved that, I'm going to duplicate this belt loop to the right. So again, drag it, hold on Shift and Alt, and I'm going to bring it closer to center back. So good, we have 2 belt loops. It's going to be 4 on the back, but we'll reflect it in a little bit and you'll see the complete shape. Alright, good. So let's draw now the back pocket. Alright, and this is going to be a simple task. Alright, using the rectangle tool again. So I'm going to select the rectangle tool and I'm going to draw the width of the pocket, and this is going to be a single welt pocket. Alright, so I'm going to draw single welt that extends right to about the width or the distance of the belt loops. Alright, let me just do this. I'm going to bring this belt loop over a little bit. Alright, and I'm going to nudge the back pocket over a little bit. And this belt loop I'm going to nudge over a little bit as well. Good. Alright, now for the purposes of rendering the back pocket, let me nudge it down a little bit. We're going to rotate this because the trouser has shape, and just for aesthetics, we're going to rotate this clockwise a little bit. So again, we can see the handles. I'm going to move the cursor on the outside and I'm going to left click and drag clockwise a little bit just to rotate the welt a little bit. Alright, so good. Next, we're going to create the dot, and usually you'd see when you have an object selected, you'll see this little dot. It's not an anchor point, but it shows you the center of the object. Alright, I'm going to bring my guides, make my guides visible, and I'm going to bring a blue guide and line it up with that dot on the center of the pocket. Alright, so I'm going to use that as a reference for my dot. So again, I'm going to use the line segment tool. You could use the pen tool, and I'm simply going to draw a line segment, right, where the blue guide intersects the top edge of the pocket. I'm going to draw a line from that point to the waist seam line and make sure that it's perpendicular to the pocket, just like that, and we have the dot. So let me just hide my blue guides, control and semicolon. I'm going to go to select, deselect. Okay, so good. Next, we want to create the bar tags. So usually when you see welt pockets, you'd see some bar tags on either edge of the pocket, and of course that is to reinforce the pockets. So just as we did before, I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to use the line segment tool again, and away from the edge of the pocket, I'm simply going to draw a line segment parallel, right, to the edge of the pocket. And I'm going to do everything I did before that we did with the bar tags on the front. So again, I'm going to reduce the stroke weight to 0.25. I'm going to go to Effect, Distort, Transform, Zigzag. Alright, in the zigzag dialog box, I'm going to check Preview. I'm going to check Relative. I'm going to use the same 10% for the size and 17 for the ridges per segment. And I'm going to use Smooth. Alright, and click OK. So with the selection tool, I'm going to reposition this close to the edge of the pocket here. Alright, bring it in a little more, and then I'm going to duplicate that using the Alt key to the opposite edge of the pocket. So good, we have our bar tags. Okay, next, this welt pocket, it has a button and buttonhole. Alright, again, you could use, I'm going to make my blue guides visible, and you could use that as a guide. So I'm going to select the rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a simple buttonhole. Alright, so I'm just drawing a rectangle that's going to represent the buttonhole. Alright, and what I'm going to do is the same technique I used for the bar tags, I'm going to use to create this buttonhole. So again, it already has a stroke weight 0.25 because Illustrator remembers what we used before. I'm going to go to Effect, Distort, Transform, Zigzag, and the same measurement. So check Preview so I can see what I'm doing. Check Relative. Let's use 10% again. We may need to change it. We're going to do Smooth, and we're going to increase the ridges per segment. Now you can see what it looks like, and this is why I say sometimes you need to change the size. So let me just reduce that a little bit. Right, so I'm going to do 5, and I'm going to increase the ridges per segment. Good. All right, so again, we're just rendering it as it would look. Good. So I'm going to click OK. I'm satisfied with that. Next, we're going to create a 4-hole button. All right, and we're going to create it right here. I'm going to zoom in a little more so you can see this exactly what we're doing. We're going to select the ellipse tool hidden below the rectangle tool. All right, 0.25 for the stroke weight is okay. Using the shift key, I'm going to draw a circle, and if you notice, I'm staying close to the buttonhole so I could draw the button relative inside or proportionate in size to the buttonhole. So good. I've drawn the first circle. Next, I'm going to, this dot on the middle again, it's not an anchor point, it's the center of the object. I'm going to move my cursor on top of that point. Don't worry, I'll align everything afterwards. And I'm going to click and drag. Then I'm going to hold on the shift key and alt key so I could size the circle from the center. So I'm creating a concentric circle slightly smaller than the original one. Alright. At this point, I'm going to zoom in again so you can see better what it is I'm doing. I'm going to draw, it's a 4-hole button, so I need to create the 4 holes on the inside. So again, using the shift key, I'm going to create a smaller circle on the inside, and I'm simply going to duplicate this. Right, so again, using the shift key and alt key, I'm going to duplicate that to the right a bit. Then using the shift key, I'll select the original one and duplicate these two using shift and alt down. Alright, so I have my 4 holes for the button. Using the shift key, I'm going to select all 4. Alright, and I'm going to go to object group, so they are now grouped. Using the selection tool, I'm going to select all of the circles now, and I'm going to align them. So we could go to the align palette, but we could use the buttons right here in the control bar or the options bar. So first we're going to select horizontal align center, then vertical align center. Great, so it's laid out nice and neat. So we're going to go to object group. Good. So let me zoom out a little bit, and simply you're going to use the selection tool and place your button now on top of your buttonhole. Now if you notice again, there's a little dot in the middle of the objects. You can align that with your blue guide. Alright, so there we have our button. Now the only problem is we could see the belt loop, or sorry, the buttonhole through the button. Just simply give it a fill of white and the problem is solved. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see what that looks like. Alright, and we have pretty much completed the belt loops, the dot, the wealth pocket with the bar tags, the button and buttonhole. We just need to reflect these objects and we will be done. So let me hide my blue guides. Using the shift key, I'm just going to select all of these objects. Actually, I need to see my blue guide to reflect it. I'm going to select the reflect tool. Alright, again, I'm going to use my blue guide. Place my reference point, place the objects above, hold on shift and alt, and there we have rotated it. And you can see my blue guide is off a little bit, so I may need to nudge this back a little bit. Good. Alright, go to select, deselect. Great. And there we have the back view of our trousers. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see that properly. And we have our front and back view. Alright, so that completes our trouser sketch tutorial. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you find it helpful. Alright, so until next time, goodbye.